Don't make it tough on yourself, right? Leverage the tools that are out there, right? Don't struggle. Focus in on the creative side, and let the tools actually do the heavy lift. I think that's one thing people forget.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Apply Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm joined by my guest, Terry Foster, who's based in Toronto, Canada. He's the CEO at Limelight. Welcome, Terry. Good to have you on.
Thanks, Alexander. Great to be here.
Now, Limelight Platform is a company where you guys provide tools to build automated, data-driven live marketing campaigns. And you guys recently acquired another company, Mesh, which is all around spatial intelligence. So I'm intrigued for those out there in probably the events marketing space. That's the biggest thing, and live events that you're wanting to get, I guess, more insight, more data. This will be the conversation you want to listen to and dig into. I'm curious. Let's start off, Terry. What do you see as the challenge that event marketers are facing? Obviously, we have COVID that kind of came into play here, but we're starting to come back to events. People are getting more comfortable. What do you see as the challenge and problem that event marketers are facing today?
The biggest challenge they're facing really is about data collection. So in the past, you have an event, you could tell obviously how many people showed up, and then how do you quantify that? They'd be, okay, it was a good event, right? People seemed engaged. Right. And so, we're in an age where data is king and everything can and should be measured. And so companies who have a very robust and sophisticated digital marketing system, there becomes a massive data hole once you invited people to the event, they attend the event, and what happens after that. Right. And so what the problem we solve is bridging that gap essentially between, pre-event, post-event, CRM, and digital marketing. And
you guys are particularly focused on enterprise space. And in the past worked a lot, I think, with in the industry of automotive, but you're also working with banking and insurance. Those are kind of like the big main industries you're focused on serving.
We serve essentially any industry who, gather people for a purpose. This is how we break it down for when your grandmother says, "What do you do for a living?" Because they don't necessarily understand what an event is. But we are very strong in automotive. And by an event too, like in the automotive space, it could be anything from, a test drive to an auto show to a track day. And so some of our larger automotive clients would hold 1,000+ events in a year, across a wide geography. And so scaling events like that and understanding the ROI of those events, without using a tool like Limelight is very, very difficult.
I'm curious to hear a bit more about kind of your background, Terry. You took the role of CEO earlier this year, but you've been a part of Limelight for 6 years on the board, and you've been on many boards in much demand. Help me understand, like, you've been in marketing for a while, right? The marketing space?
I've been in MarTech for a long time. I've been in MarTech for, longer than people called it MarTech. So, I've worked in companies around the world, London, New York, even in the Middle East.
You just love like marketing? Is it just always been in you?
A little bit, the tech is fascinating, right? So I'm certainly not, on the creative side of marketing, but I've been part of companies who've built and sold solutions to the PR industry, to the marketing industry, to the advertising industry. And so I've been a little bit on the bleeding edge of marketing technology, for the last 20 years. And so, part of the reason I came to Limelight is, there's someone, one of the founders, we worked together in the past, and he was leaving the PR tech space to go into MarTech, and what they were doing was intriguing. Certainly solving an issue that's being problematic. It's sort of the last bastion of collecting data, for the marketer. At the time it was a difficult problem to solve. And so I've seen the company grow over the last 6 years, acquiring market share, going deep into the different verticals. And there's still a lot more to go. We were very early to market. We were one of the first to market. So, we spent a lot of time sort of educating the market as well. And so those challenges are something that, intrigue me.
You've in all the cases of MarTech, has it always been in the enterprise space for you?
Yes, so servicing some of the largest companies in the world, with their challenges, right? Building marketing stacks. Where do these not so obvious pieces of the marketing stack where they fit in, right? So event marketers probably wouldn't. Some of them probably wouldn't acknowledge that there is this data gap, until they're sitting at the table with their digital marketing colleagues who've got robust folders of data and charts, graphs, and they can tell you everything about the consumer, right? And then they're sitting there saying, "Yeah, it was a good event," right? And so, in the modern world, where we are in 2021, that's not good enough. And the phenomenon we've seen during the course of COVID is that the experiential teams, many, if they still are intact, have been seconded to the digital team. And so they've been, really exposed to that robust data set.
You drive a great point that, like, you have traditional advertising used to be of TV and radio and stuff, where you just throw it out there and you see what happens. And maybe event marketing was kind of thrown in that same bucket. Let's put on events, and over all of this, hopefully people will buy our product because we're putting enough stuff out. Then comes along digital with minute tracking ability of each degree of conversion points and this and that. And now it seems to be infiltrating every area, including event marketing. How long is this transition been happening? And is it readily, like, is every a marketing exec in these enterprise companies saying, wow, yes, we need this? Or is it still a disconnect?
They should be saying they need this, because the measuring the ROI and understanding things like attribution, are critical, right? Did someone come to the event and then make a purchase because of this? What part of the buyer's journey is that? What are some of the buying signals? What are the purchase intent signals that you're getting from individuals interacting with your brand, in person?
Are you saying event marketing could compete with digital marketing in the same sense of having the same amount of data and analytics of showing ROI?
Well, they're complementary, right? So, your digital team is usually driving, the people to the event, right? Or at least the experiential team is harnessing that power, right? And so you can see the journey through that digital lens, but then there's that black hole the moment they get to an event. And the tech that people have been using have been things like Google Sheets or a spreadsheet or something like that. That's sort of disconnected. There's a disruption, in terms of the MarTech stack that happens, in the live event environment. And technology that's been developed in the last few years have allowed experiential marketers to go beyond, just a list of people who attended, who didn't attend, right? And do you want us to follow up with you? Yes or no? And, one of the ways we wanted to fill the gap beyond something like Limelight was the acquisition of Mesh, and understanding the way in which people interact with brands or interact in general at events.
Yeah, you had mentioned this recent acquisition of Mesh, of this spatial intelligence, being able to know, I guess, where people are, what's happening. Let's dive a little bit into that technology behind it. How does it work?
So Mesh is a technology that essentially is measuring Wi-Fi pings. So when you're out in the public and you have your cell phone or mobile phone in your pocket or purse or what have you, it's constantly searching for a Wi-Fi network to connect to. And so what we'll do is set up a mesh network. So that's where the name comes from, at an event, and we can sort of follow you around. And it's anonymous, it's GDPR compliant. We don't know anything about you other than you were attending that event, and these were your movements during that event. Where it becomes important is you're able to finally understand things like repeat visits. How many times did an individual come to the booth at an event? What was the dwell time? A use case for would be super smart wheel stands at auto shows. You've doubled down on a certain new model, but you're seeing the dwell times are higher on this model over there. And so things even like you can finally measure passersby. People are doing it by using the clicker, right? And obviously it's extremely inaccurate. And you can also tell how engaged they are as well too, right? So you can set up a measurement depending on how far they are from the booth, and you can set up the different dwell times as well. So you can get quite sophisticated. And so you'll be able to then see how many people at an event interacted, directly with you. And then for events in and of themselves, we do some work for Advertising Week. Didn't do it last year because of COVID, but the year before. And, for event organizers, they really want to understand, what's intriguing to people. They want to understand repeat visits. They want to know where everybody is during the keynote speech. Are they at the bar, or are they, in the auditorium listening to that keynote? So it's, critical to sort of understand, the movement of people. And then even more critical is the analysis that goes behind it. It's one thing to have the numbers. It's another thing to actually be able to action the data, that's put in front of you. And that's where mesh comes into play.
Thinking about this technology makes me think of overall getting the adoption of leadership inside of an organization. Say, yes, let's do this. Let's try it. How do you encourage adoption of a new solution when it comes to new technology itself? Because there's always a pushback of, will this work? Is it the right investment? Is it the right time? How do you encourage adoption of new technology?
For us, a lot of it is thought leadership. Some of this, of what we do, as we talked about before, people don't know it exists, right? So a lot of it's an education piece. We put out a lot of thought leadership content, and people do interact with it. And, it's almost like an old-fashioned drip campaign. And we've been sort of the thought leader in this space for a very long time. But then we also have the goods to back it up. We're not just talking about these things and best practices. And so it comes down to
data.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But we also try to make sure it's more practical as well. So, right now we think just in terms of our audience, they think spatial analytics, spatial intelligence is a super sexy thing, and then when we get a chance to talk to them one-on-one, they see how relatively easy it is, to install that and interact with it. And the real value comes in understanding what we can do for you specifically. It's a generic offering that is personalized, per client.
Being able to get that internal adoption. So it's always like, okay, maybe one person is interested, but trying to then share it and sell it on to your boss or the next person up. I think there's always certain people inside an organization that naturally enjoy new ideas, new technology, innovation, and those who do not. If you were to give a piece of advice to someone inside an organization that they're having to bring this up to their leadership or others and sell this idea internally, and overall the concept of a new technology, what would you say? What would you share with?
You have to, a better way to start this is everything can and should be measured now. Right? There's a finite amount of your marketing budget. And so you want to put the budget where it's going to be most effective. And where you have holes in that data set, you're guessing, right? And so in 2021, I don't think anyone, should be guessing about, the effectiveness of spend, should be guessing about the ROI of spend, should be guessing about attribution or any of those things. And I think that does resonate with people. But some of it too is a little bit of fear of trying something new. And so we always start with trials. We start small and we go big. Someone doesn't knock on our door and immediately want a full installation of Limelight. What they want to do is start smaller and with a little proof of concept. At the enterprise level, you then have it fully integrated into people's MarTech stacks and CRMs, and it's a seamless part of what they do. And for the clients who don't need as heavy a lift, it's a subset of that. And so, we are ready when the customer or client is ready. We can fit neatly into whatever stage they're at. And I think too, when they start to put those things in, it starts to change their behavior right away. and then they can't live without it. In the same way, you think about, digital marketing started to reveal all sorts of things, good, bad, and ugly, right? Sometimes people don't like those initial numbers, but then you start to manage, your business by those numbers, and it becomes second nature. And this is also not some level of rocket science. There's not a massive learning curve. And I think that's what's important about this as well. It's numbers people have and data people have been dying to get for years. So it's not difficult to convince them. It becomes more a logistical issue when you go to set it up. And that's our biggest thing that we have to overcome.
We have a lot of other tech entrepreneurs that listen to our series, and that whole concept of getting an initial test, being able to say, hey, let's try this out. Where have you found it kind of dialed in on the right size of a good test? If it's not too small that you can't see the potential of where it could go, but it's not too big that it creates a barrier. How have you found that right mix?
I find there's a magic number. It's $10,000, right? $10,000 is something that is significant enough that people are going to pay attention, but not big enough that it involves multiple layers of permission. So if you're an enterprise solution, right, and you can get a test in at the $10,000 range, that feels like the sweet spot. Obviously there's freemium models and things like that, but when you give something away for free, then or even a free trial, people don't tend to be as engaged as if they have to pay something. And so that's always been. Sorry, say that again.
Does freemium work for enterprise?
No, because and we've all tried freemium software, right? It's meant to get you to go to the paid version, right? You always, if you're using it seriously, you always bump up against something, right? And you have to move to that next version, right? And so I think freemium, is something that is better in a consumer model, a B2C model, and a B2B model.
That's powerful insight of finding that right moment where both it makes sense for you as the provider, but also the company is saying, okay, let's invest in it. Let's try it out. Actually put some energy behind it, not, well, that didn't matter. And you don't put any further thought into it.
Exactly.
For you, as leading this forward, what are you most excited about the kind of the future for Limelight? Well, actually, before we get to the future, I'm curious of just all past, actually, because 6 years you've been part of it. When did it actually begin? Was it 6 years ago? What was the begin date?
2014. So the Limelight itself was spun out of an agency the founder owned. And where this idea came from, Jonah Madanik being the founder, is that he saw a need in the marketplace for a SaaS software that replicated the custom work his team were doing for every new client. And so the more progressive clients were asked for this, but it was built on a one by one basis. And so, what Jonah was able to do was build a piece of software that replicated that, with the customization and everything else that simply needed to be turned on per client, right? And so that was the basis of the genesis of the business. And he was essentially first to market. He saw that need, super early on, and he was the first one to be able to capitalize on it.
That idea of taking a service and turning it into SaaS makes a lot of sense, because you find the repeatability that there's only so many variables in many cases, and you can start to find the similarities between the two. In this event marketing space and creating the tech around it, were there any kind of lessons learned over the years that you've also, as a board member over the years, you probably had a little bit of visibility into that you guys were able to meet and then overcome?
Well, it's the typical challenge of any startup, right? So I've been part of the startup community in Toronto for the past 15 years. And I've sat at the table with super innovative, forward-thinking people who are just a little bit too early. There was a fantastic company I was involved with who created HubSpot before HubSpot did. But you've got to be right place, sort of right time. and be able to sort of be able to survive that period, right? So I think for Limelight, the first few years they were super early to market, right? And so it's all about it's all about timing. And so, these guys were skilled enough too that when the market wasn't ready, they were still able to acquire clients, and all those beachhead clients, you grow on, right? So that very first client's always the hardest one to get. But if you get the right one, then you can build off of it.
Mm-hmm. That is a powerful piece of knowing the right timing, but getting into that first client to be able to serve, and then you grow from there. So do you feel the timing wise, because you talked about they were a little early, do you feel that the timing is here now? Like has COVID accelerated the focus of more analytical based event marketing or data focused event marketing?
So in times of crises, and I've been in the MarTech space from the time of the dot-com bubble bursting through the Great Recession, et cetera. I find in times of crises, what immediately follows when budgets come under pressure is proving the ROI. It's never failed to be sort of the outcome of that. And, as we go into recession and things like that, and people are cutting those budgets, it's extremely important to prove that the money you're deploying is effective. And so I think what we'll see after the sort of initial boom over COVID, we may see, the market cooling off a little bit, and that ask for that return on investment will be there. And there are finally tools now to be able to do that. Limelight is not the only experiential tool doing this now. There are a few others. But the market is very large, and I think that will only help all of us. That situation that we'll see.
Competition isn't always a bad thing. It actually proves that there is a market too, right. And that there is a need and demand. But I appreciate that whole concept of after something major goes on and people are looking around, okay, that's when the question is, are you generating revenue? And the need for tracking ROI is there. And that's where tools like this come into play. So coming back to an earlier question I was going to ask you is now, what are you excited about moving forward from here, and what's coming up for you at Limelight?
I think for us, we're super excited about the acquisition of Mesh. We finally have the complete solution. Mesh really is top of the funnel. We're working on some interesting things together. There was a natural fit between the companies anyway, and had been friendly for years. And so it made sense that during the quote unquote quiet period of COVID, that we were in discussions about coming together, and we were able to make that happen. And so, for us, it really becomes a game changer. It puts us in different verticals. Because Mesh's appeal is broader than experiential. They do a lot of work in sports sponsorship space, as well as in retail. And so, we have some combined offerings in both those spaces as well, that we're shortly going to launch. So I think too, for the team, to have colleagues, beyond Toronto, New York, and sort of Vancouver and San Francisco, where we were, we now have colleagues in Sydney. We've got colleagues in Europe. So it allows us to enter those markets a little quicker than we would have. So I think that's where the excitement for the business lies, in near term for sure.
The future of an event experiences for consumers, anything you can pontificate or predict in the near future of a couple of years, or maybe even 5-10 years from now?
I think the experiential is only going to grow. People love experiences, right? So we've seen in the last few years that people would rather invest in experiences than anything else, in their personal lives. And people's personal lives are always mirrored in their professional lives and beyond, right? So this is where experiential comes into play in the B2B space, as well as in B2C. And the companies who do it extremely well, it leaves an impression on you that you wouldn't be able to recreate in any other way. And then also, I think for COVID, it's proved that, people are dying to be together. Maybe dying is the wrong word to use, but, after being cooped up for such a long time, people want to be together. And I think, certainly the scars of COVID will linger long enough to be able to take advantage of that fact alone. And so, clever businesses are going to be able to double down on that and do some incredible things. And they're going to need tools to do it at scale. They're going to need tools to prove the ROI. They're going to need tools to understand how to enhance these things going forward.
The power of tools in every use case is only going to grow as long as you have the right tool for the right way for what you're doing. A fun question I always like to ask every person is, are there any apps or tools, personal ones, that you enjoy and like to use, the more cheaper ones, whether it's for personal or business?
Well, that's a good question, right? What I like these days, honestly, Alexander, is that sort of everything's on my phone. So every app that we use, or anything we use for our business, it is on my phone, like Expensify and things like that. It does make things, super, super simple. The apps that are interesting to me are those tedious admin apps, or admin tasks rather, that are made easier with your phone. So Expensify is one of them. Everybody hates doing expense reports. So, that's got to be one of my absolute favorites in the business sector. And then beyond that, it's like things like Instagram, right? Which is a window into, when you curate your feed well enough, it's a wonderful place. When you're a little lazy with it, it's an awful place.
A follow-up question to this is there anything you truly hate that you wish there was an app for to solve it for you?
No, I can't tell that to you, because that could be our next business. So I'm going to hold that one. I'm going to hold that one back.
You're going to hold that one.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I love it. It's usually the challenges, the things you hate that produce great business ideas.
Absolutely.
And solutions.
Absolutely.
Tara, this has been powerful to hear both your own focus and energy in this space and where you guys are headed, and fascinating for this focus of spatial analytics and this acquisition of Mesh of where you guys are going. If you were to leave any word of wisdom for an event marketer that they should keep in mind going forward, coming out of COVID and what coming up, what would you share?
Don't make it tough on yourself. Right. Leverage the tools that are out there. Right. Don't struggle. Focus in on the creative side. And let the tools actually do the heavy lift. I think that's one thing people forget too. Right. That there are tools out there. I would say that Limelight and Mesh relieve a lot of the heavy lift in the same way Expensify does too. Right. We're going to take away the stuff that is difficult to do, and then also deliver you results that you've never been able to get before.
For those that want to learn more, you can head over to limelightplatform.com, and looks like you'll be able to get a demo and explore what they do. Thanks again, Terry, for your time. This is great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexander.
And we'll see you all on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.